Hey everybody, welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo. It is April 3rd, and Bo Willette is my name, and you can always look at the archives of these devotionals at Bo Willette, BeauOuellette. Check them out if you like. I'm going through the Bible right now in my devotion, so I'm just kind of going from the beginning to the end. And I'm in 2 Kings chapter 12 and 13 today. And it's about kind of this wonderful... hold on real quick. It's about this wonderful king, King Joash. And very cool guy. Did some restoration, some kind of reforming, if you will, of the land of Israel, back to Yahweh worship. And so it's kind of a upswing, if you will, when it comes to Israel and their life as a nation. A lot of kings we saw weren't so cool and didn't do so good, but this guy, Joash, who began his reign when he was 7 years old. And so if you're 7 years old, you got to have a good mom. So that's how it starts. Joash began to rule over Judah in the 7th year of King Jehu's reign in Israel. He reigned in Jerusalem 40 years. His mother was Zebiah from Beersheba. What a cool mom, huh? We get to thank God this morning for our moms. If some of us don't have moms, some of you don't have moms, maybe you didn't have a mom. And that can be always something that you kind of miss, I'm sure. And having a mom can be a really cool thing. It's an awesome thing. I think sometimes our society just doesn't lift up moms enough, and the value of a mom and being nurtured by someone, cared for, always thought of. Moms tend to have their kids, right on their minds all the time. It's like the kids are the apple of their eye. Us dads we do our best, but there's some things we just can't do. Just biologically, it just can't happen. We try, but it's not like a mom. There's something, let's say, that you can't see. There's something that a mom just does that you can't quite duplicate. And that's cool, because that's diversity, right? Yeah, there's husbands, there's wives, there's male, there's female. That's what we call it, diversity, right? Harmony, right? Not just melody, but harmony. And this woman, she did a good job. Her son became king when he was 7 years old. In all of his life, Joash did what was pleasing in the Lord's sight, because Jehoiada the priest instructed him. And this is important. Joash was a good king because there was people in his life that invested in him. In the book of 2 Timothy chapter 2, it tells us, Paul says to his protege Timothy, hey, the things that you've heard from me, Timothy, commit these to faithful men who will be able to teach others also. Isn't that cool? Hey, you hear from me, you learn, you hand it down to people who are faithful, and they hand it down to people who are faithful. And this is how it should be. This kind of discipleship should be going just all the time in our lives, feeding into another generation of people, helping them to stay focused on the Lord, to stay focused on glorifying God, stay focused on doing what God's calling them to do. That should be their call. That should be where they're at. And to not get distracted. There's so many distractions within the church and without the church. And sometimes you got to push those things aside, right? Take a break and just focus right back. And this wonderful priest was a guy who just focused Joash right up. It says, one day King Joash said to the priest, collect all the money brought as the sacred offerings into the Lord's temple, whether it is regular assessment or payment of vows or a voluntary gift, and let the priest take some of that money to pay for whatever repairs are needed at the temple. So now the temple is going to be kind of going through this restoration process. But by the 23rd year year of Joash's reign, the priests still had not repaired the temple. So King Joash called for Jehoiada and the other priests and asked them, "Why haven't you repaired the temple? Don't use any more money of your own needs. From now on, it must all be spent on the temple repairs." So the priest agreed not to accept any more money from the people, and they also agreed to let others take responsibility for repairing the temple. Oh, this is a cool thing to think about too in the morning, is not only the work need to be done and things need to get done, but sometimes I'm not maybe the person to do it, right? Sometimes there needs to be someone else who can do it and who's maybe better at it than I am, right? Hey, the way you guys are doing it, it ain't working out. So, hey, others need to take responsibility for repairing the temple. And, you know, when things ain't getting done, sometimes different management needs to happen. And that's so true. Then Jehoiada the priest bored a hole in the lid of a large chest and set it on the right-hand side of the altar at the entrance of the temple, kind of like a little box. And the priest guarding the entrance put all the people's contributions into the chest. Whenever the chest became full, the court secretary and the high priest counted the money that had been brought to the Lord's temple and put it in bags. Then they gave the money to the construction supervisors, who used it to pay the people working on the Lord's temple, the carpenters, the builders, the masons, the stone cutters. They all used the money to buy the timber and the furnished stone needing to repair the Lord's temple, and they paid other expenses related to the temple's restoration. How cool is this? I love the Bible. It's so specific, right? It's so today. It's just like today, right? You know, you got to, take the money, use it in the right spot, put it in the right person's hands so that these skilled people who can do the job well, maybe, me and you ain't cut out to do the job. Maybe we need to get someone who's skilled to take care of that, to do it right. You know, if you ask me to cut a stone, it probably is I'm not going to do very well. But if you put that stone in the right person's hands, man, it really comes out beautiful. Right management knows who to contact. They know who's going to get the job done. That's what this manager's doing, obviously, now that things are getting done. And they've chosen a different way to kind of distribute or get the money dealt with too, and distribute it properly. And notice it's very much like a box at church. Have you ever gone into a church and you see little boxes around to collect tithes and offerings? It kind of is a little bit similar to that in this way, right? Where they bore a hole in a chest and put it in there and collect the money and distribute the money and things like that. And different people count it for accountability purposes. You saw that? Did you see that in this section? Yeah, very cool. So the money brought to the temple was not used for making silver bowls, lamps, snuffers, basins, trumpets, or other articles of gold, silver for the temple of the Lord. It was paid to the workmen who used it for the temple repairs. No accounting of this money was required for the construction supervisors because they were honest and trustworthy men. I hope I'm an honest and trustworthy man when it comes to the money of the church, right? That I'm not, taking it, stealing it, swiping it, doing whatever, for my own benefit. And it's important that every church does have an accountability with the money, because they're people's gifts unto the Lord to the upkeep of the church building and for the workers of that facility. And the ministers. And so we see that in the Bible, it's very similar to what we see today, even in church, in these chapters, right? This chapter right here. It sounds very much like the way we do it at church. And says, however, the money that was contributed for guilt offerings and sin offerings was not brought into the Lord's temple. It was given to the priest for their own use, to take care of the priests who were ministering to the people. So you had the offerings that were given into a church that were used for the upkeep of the building, paying paying specialists to come in and take care of things, management of that facility, and of obviously the ministers as well. So you have a lot of things going on. And it says, and about this time, King Hazael of Aram went to war against Gath and captured it. Then he turned to attack Jerusalem. Those Arameans, just when you think everything's going good, conflict happens again. King Joash collected all the sacred objects of Jehoshaphat, Jehoram, and Ahaziah, the previous kings of Judah, and that were dedicated along with what he himself had dedicated. He sent them all to Hazael, along with the gold and the treasuries of the Lord's temple of the royal palace. So Hazael called off his attack at Jerusalem. So how do you call off an attack? Money. Yeah, money. Isn't it amazing? Money, paying off people. Money really is the reason for a lot of what we see in our world today. Why do people do what they do? Why do we go the way we go? Money. Isn't that a trip? The rest of the events in Joash's reign and everything he did are recorded in the book of the history of the kings of Judah. Joash's officers plotted against him and assassinated him at Beth Millo on the road to Silla. The assassins were Josachar, son of Shemith of Jehozabad, son of Shomer, both trusted advisors. Joash was buried with his ancestors in the city of David, and his son Amaziah became the next king. Can you believe this? Joash begins his rule at 7 years old, and he reigns in Israel, 40 years from Jerusalem. And he does great things. He really is an awesome dude. And what does he get for it? Bumped off. Man, dude, talk about jacked, a messed up story. I mean, event, right? I hate to say story because it's a history. This isn't a story. This is a history of the kings of Israel. But how sad is this? Both by advisors, close people. Man, aren't we hurt by people that are close to us most? We are. It's amazing how we are hurt so much by people and what they say. Your friend can tell you something and you can just kind of brush it off. Like, oh, okay, whatever. Yep, got it. The person, you're intimate with, though, that person say something to you, right? Same thing. And then it's like, what? Huh? And then you're like, you're really hit by that. Oh, that hurt my heart. It's weird how the more intimate we become as human beings, the more sometimes we really have difficulty being able to be safe and open and honest with one another, and we become like walking on eggshells all the time, and everything is so sensitive where we can't just say, hey, this. Like, that's what I would say to my friend. Hey, this. You just talk it the way it is. And your friend goes, yeah, that's right. Da-da-da-da-da. And that's kind of how it goes. But, that person you're intimate with, sometimes it can get really sensitive, And I understand that. And there can be a good side to that sensitivity. Don't get me wrong. But there also can be a real enabling and a real manipulation and that goes on, and just not a very healthy sensitivity, where you don't do things anymore. You don't want to hurt their feelings. It's always you don't want to hurt their feelings, where pretty soon you're not doing nothing because you don't want to hurt feelings, and that's not good either. We have to be able to kind of do our things under the Lord, and whatever we're going to do and how we're going to talk, we have to come to God first and say, God, let me first have you in mind. I don't want to make decisions, to enable people or, to manipulate people or blah, 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 blah. I just got to do them under the Lord, make decisions under the Lord, and have really God in your mind at the forefront. Anyway, it's sad. Advisors close people to him, bump him off. Why? Maybe they're bummed at his the way he handled the deal with the Aramean people, buying him off, right? Maybe they were really bummed that he took all the temple gold that was dedicated by the previous kings, and he used it to deal with the an enemy power. Whatever it is, we see that it happens today all the time. Does governments today take resources from the people and then use them to try to pay for war? Yeah, that's happening today, right? It happens all the time. Kings and rulers, right? They're not taking money out of their own pocket, right? It's not like they're going into their 401k and draining that thing. No, they go to, what's available, right, in the country. And then they liquidate that or whatever they do and move it over there. And, yeah, it's pretty gnarly. It's interesting. You have this whole chapter on just dealing with money, in a sense, right? And good management. So maybe that's why they were mad, is the way Joash manned the military things going on. So Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, began to rule over Israel. Now we're dealing with the north tribes. We were just in Judah and Jerusalem. Now we're back up north. In the 23rd year of King Joash, reign of Judah, he reigned in Samaria 70 years. He did what was evil in the Lord's sight. He followed the example of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, continuing the sins. The Lord was very angry with Israel. And he allowed King Hazael of Aram and his son Ben-Hadad to defeat them repeatedly. Then Jehoiada prayed for the Lord's help, and the Lord heard his prayer. Wow, wonderful act of mercy on God, right? Hey, does God have to be merciful on Jehoahaz? I keep pronouncing his name a little off. Every time I pronounce it, I feel like I'm saying a different name. Some of these names are difficult. But it's interesting, right? Did the Lord have to help him out? The answer is no. For he could see how severely the king of Aram was opposing Israel. So the Lord provided someone to rescue the Israelites from the tyranny of the Arameans. Then Israel lived in safety again as they had in former years. Tyranny, right? That tyranny, that tyrannical rule. Is our world filled with tyrannical rulers? Yeah. Centralized power structures? Yeah. And what did the king do? He prayed what? For the Lord's help. And the Lord sent someone, right? Man, that's what we need to do too, is pray for the Lord's help and pray for some deliverance from tyranny, right? Someone who's ruling, doing things that is against the people's power, right? Against the people's desire, but still does it. Does what they want to do, right? And, sometimes I think, oh, man, if I was just in power, I wouldn't do what I want to do. But that's the problem. You get us human beings in power, and then we're all messing up. We're not doing so well. May God give us a lot of integrity, that if the more power we get in our world, whether you call that freedom or whatever it is, we get that power, that we use it correctly. But they continued to sin, following the evil example of Jeroboam. They also allowed the Asherah pole in Samaria to remain standing. Finally, Jehoahaz's army was reduced to 50 charioteers, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers. The king of Aram had killed the others, trampling them like dust under his feet. They just went back to their idol worship. So the north continues to kind of do this. It doesn't seem that in the north of Israel, the kings really have any full-blown revival of demolishing everything that's of pagan, worshiping pagan idols. Here you get these moments here and there where something maybe good happens, but it's very slight. In the South, we get a little more. It seems like there's more of a spiritual fervor, maybe because Jerusalem's there, right? And the temple's right there. And so the rest of the events of Jehoahaz's reign, everything he did, and the extent of his power are recorded in the book of the history of kings of Israel. Then Jehoahaz died, and he was buried in Samaria, and his son Jehoash became the next king. So Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, began to rule over Israel in the 37th year of King Joash's reign in Judah. He reigned in Samaria 16 years, but he did what was evil in the Lord's sight, and he refused to turn from the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, that led Israel to commit sin, right? So, Pete and repeat, we're in a boat. We see the continual bailing of the northern tribes here. Just constant messing up here. It says Jehoash, son of, and then it says the rest of the events of Jehoash reign and everything he did are included in the book of the history of the kings. And when Jehoash died, he was buried in Samaria and the kings of Israel, and his son Jeroboam too became the next king. Wow. So there's not much mentioned about this guy other than he didn't do a really good job at all. And that's all that's mentioned about him. What a bummer, right? Oh, man. Management of a country, management of a temple, management of a tribe. Hey, what do you manage? What do I manage? And how is that management going? Yeah. And so when Elisha was in his last illness, we finally pick up with Elisha. Remember Elisha? The prophet in the government, that tension that's there. So let's read about this. Then Elisha was in his last illness. In his last illness. Isn't that interesting? The prophet, is sick. King Jehoash of Israel visited him and wept over him. My father, I see the chariots and charioteers of Israel, he cried. Elisha told him, get a bow and some arrows, and the king did as he was told. Elisha told him, put your hand on the bow, and Elisha laid his own hand on the king's hand. Then he commanded, open the eastern window, and he opened it, and he said, shoot. So he shot an arrow. Elisha proclaimed, this is the Lord's arrow, an arrow of victory over Aram. You will completely conquer the Arameans at Aphex. Then he said, now pick up the other arrow and strike them against the ground. So the king picked them up, struck the ground 3 times. But the man of God was angry with him. You should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times, he exclaimed. Then you would have beaten Aram until they were entirely destroyed. Now you will be victorious only 3 times. Then Elisha died and was buried. So Elisha has another act of mercy from the hand of God through Elisha to a king who is totally sold out to idolatry. Amazing, the mercy of God knows no bounds. I got to remember that this morning. I might think someone doesn't deserve something, and they probably don't. But God is merciful, and God's mercy goes beyond what sometimes I think it should go, which I have to be careful, because if I this morning judge someone too harsh, then I have to realize that, hey, what is the measurement of my own judgment? What if God judges me completely? What if God looks at me and says, hey, let's look at Bo and let's judge him according to my law? How would I fare in that court case? Not too good, right? I'd probably find a lot of failure there, no doubt about it, and I would be found guilty. We have to love the mercy of God. We have to love the mercy of God on people who don't deserve mercy. And instead of being bitter because God's being merciful to someone, maybe we should just be thankful that God's being merciful to people. And what a blessing. Moses, or it says Noah, remember Noah in the flood? Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. Man, what a beautiful idea that we would have some grace and mercy, in our life from God. Because certainly we look at the world and we see it's quite the mess, right? And so there's a prophecy that's given through Elisha, and notice Elisha is sick, right? There's no people get sick. Even the great prophet gets sick, right? Elisha. And Elisha dies. Groups of Moabite raiders used to invade the land each spring. Once, when some Israelites were burying a man, they spied a band of these raiders, so they hastily threw the corpse into the tomb of Elisha and fled. But as soon as the body touched Elisha's bones, the dead man revived and jumped to his feet. King Hazael of Aram, wow, that is quite a narrative in that short period of time. Wouldn't it be cool if someone could just be around you and be revived? Man, that's pretty cool thought. Hey, someone can come around me and actually be encouraged, be revived of spirit, right? Have freshness of life, just by being around my being. Man, that would be awesome. King Hazael of Aram had oppressed Israel during the entire reign of King Jehoahaz. But the Lord was gracious and merciful to the people of Israel, and they were not totally destroyed. There it is. God's gracious and is merciful, right? Slow to anger and rich in love. He pitied them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And to this day, he still not has completely destroyed them or banished them from his presence. King Hazael of Aram died, and his son Ben-Hadad became the next king. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, recaptured from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the towns that had been taken from Jehoash's father, Jehoahaz. Jehoash defeated Ben-Hadad on 3 occasions, and he recovered the Israelite towns. Okay, so we see a fulfillment of what Elisha last prophesied. So we see the end of Elisha. We had Elijah, we have Elisha, and now we're going to see what happens with these kings. What prophet is going to come on the scene? Who is going to finally come on the scene and kind of restore things, get things working right? Seems like we're in second gear, in Judah, in the southern part of Israel. We're in second gear. Seems like we're still in first gear in the northern part of Israel. With those kings, it seems like the prophet can get us maybe up to third gear, but then we just quickly downshift again and just can't seem to get that engine moving. We can't seem to get right. We're constantly waiting at this stage in the Bible for someone to come on the scene and kind of get things back to the worship of the true and living God in a rightful way, in a consistent way, in a longevity kind of way. And this is going to be the theme of the scriptures for. This is where they're at. This is how they go, and we'll see some amazing light, on the scene, but it's going to be a while, hundreds of years in the future. We're going to get some light on the scene, and you're going to think everything's going to go great. You think it's all going to go awesome, and then the people of Israel are going to crucify the one that seems like he's the one. It's unreal. The message of the Bible is like, where it says here, Lord was gracious and merciful. All you could say is, man, that the God of the Bible is so merciful and so gracious. It's out of this world. It's beyond our brains to think of how gracious and merciful God is. And so, we got to remember that. So a very interesting couple chapters, a lot of it on management, I think, at the beginning, how you manage, how you are with your integrity with money. What does your money say about you? Things like that. how is your walk with Jesus? How does it seen in your money and the way you deal with money? And then we see that sometimes even the closest people in our lives can hurt us tremendously, and that can really have an effect on us. We see how these kings come and go, some of them very short reigns, and not doing too well, and that we're constantly waiting for someone to really deal with things. Elisha goes out like a champ, though, and that's cool to see, right? Yeah, absolutely. But he gets sick, and sometimes even the minister gets ill. That happens, right? And we all go the way of all flesh. We all pass away. So hey, good chapters. And Laura, thanks for tuning in the morning. I caught ya. So you guys have a great one. If you're watching this later, you guys take care, okay? Bye-bye.